Welcome back to another episode here on the channel. My name's Andrew, and today we're going to talk about sort of a foundational piece to transformation, especially for those of us, middle age, 40 plus, where it can be really easy to feel like, we are who we are, we're set in our ways, our preferences are very familiar, and changing that seems like a very daunting and maybe even unwanted step, even if we don't like the way that we're existing in the world right now. So I'm going to talk about my journey and about what's really helped me, and hopefully through that there'll be something that you can see for yourself that can be also helpful. If you're intrigued about the idea of upgrading your mind and what that might lead to in terms of an experience of life that's different than the one you're having right now. So my journey, and you may have heard a little bit about this in the intro video on the channel, but I'll tell a little bit of the story again. My journey was one of sort of a lot of emphasis around personal development. I had an extensive library of all the self-help books, the programs, all the tactics and of all the gurus. And from the outside, it looked like I had a successful life. I had a couple of businesses, a family, and a nice house and a nice neighborhood, and all the rest. But on the inside, I was a bit of a mess. Exhausted, but also growingly unhappy with who I was in the world and how I was showing up in the world. But I had no sense of what to do about that. I just knew that day to day I wasn't really a happy person on the inside, no matter what the outside looked like. And then I got very fortunate to have an experience where I met an old friend of mine that I had grown up with and gone to high school with. And after a quick catch-up, he said to me, you're not as I remember you. And then he described this fun-loving, free spirit, adventurous young guy that he had grown up with and done all kinds of great, crazy stuff with. And he said, what's going on with that? And I then sort of went into my series of excuses and blaming other people and all of the external things in my life that were leading to how I was showing up today. And, he paused and then he asked me a question that really has transformed the rest of my life. And that was 17 years ago now. That question, when I share it, often leads people to think one thing about what made that a powerful question and a powerful reason for change. But I'm actually going to talk about it from a very different perspective, and one that most people have no clue about. And I think that is where the secret lies for change. So let's go back to that moment. He said to me, and at this moment, at this time in my life, I had 3 daughters. They were quite young at the time. And he said, you might want to consider which version of you want your girls to remember you as. And that question hit me hard. It hit me hard in the moment, and then the days that followed. And it hit me hard not because I was trying to live up to some parental standard or some external validation of who I was and how I was showing up in the world. It hit me hard because when he said those words, I knew the answer immediately. And in fact, I knew the answer in enough detail that I could see all of the parts of who I would want that person to be in my own life experience up until that point. I could see the evidence that I had been that person already. I had shown up in the way that I would want my girls to remember me. But over time, I had stopped being that way consistently, and new ways that were not favorable in my mind had started to creep in. And so that internal feeling I was feeling of unhappiness wasn't about me compared to some future state of me or me compared to somebody else out in the world. It was me against a better version of myself that I had already witnessed. That's who I wanted my girls to remember me as. And the challenge we have is that the world is full of these books and these programs and these messages and these social channels that are showing us who we can become. They're selling us on who we can become. And I'm here to tell you that the most powerful reason for you to change, if you want to live a happier life and a life that feels more aligned to who you are, is to become more of who you've already been. The parts of you that you're most proud of, the moments in your life that you most respect yourself for how you showed up. That is who you need to focus on becoming again. That is the person the world needs to meet on a more consistent basis. And my experience in how to get to that point is what we're going to cover in all the videos on this channel. But I'll point to 3 starting points. The first one is to actually spend some time thinking about your life and thinking about the moments that come to mind when you showed up and were truly a version of yourself that you really respect and that you're really proud of. Different moments, different experiences, how did you handle them well? How did you handle them in the way that you wish you could handle them all the time in that way? Make a note of those. Remind yourself that you are, within you, the person that responded in that way at that moment. Once you've done that, step 2 is to consider what's the gap right now between who you are today and that version of yourself that you've seen evidence of through this reflection back on the events of your life. Identify the gap. Be honest with yourself about where growth needs to happen. And point number 3 is, if you have people in your life that you deeply care about and that you deeply wish knew this version of you that maybe they haven't had a glimpse of in a while, or maybe they weren't around when some of these events happened and you handled them as gracefully as you did. Think about those people and make those people and this evolving version of yourself back to this what you're capable of version. Ground it in a determination to show them who you're capable of being once again. That's been my journey, is to come back to the version of me that my friend reminded me about. And I do it every day. Every morning I start the day by reminding myself of the qualities I've identified in myself in different areas of my life. My playfulness, my commitment, my focus and dedication to things that matter in the world, my willingness to live life on my own rules, not other people's rules, my excitement about chasing dreams and chasing goals and helping other people do the same. These are all aspects of myself that I am very proud of, that I respect about myself, and that over time found ways to sort of dissipate and get replaced by a darker, more selfish version of me, or a more conforming version of me, if I'm honest. And today I make a choice every morning. How am I going to show up today in the areas of my life that matter most? And I write it out every morning. It's just simple words: adventurous, playful, patient, calm, peaceful, energetic, strong. Whatever the words are for you that represent a version of yourself that you have seen and witnessed at different aspects of your life, that's what we're talking about. So there's an invitation there to do your homework first, to really think back through your life about those moments, to identify the gaps and the areas where you really would like to see more of that version of you that you've seen glimpses of, to see it more often, more consistently, to ground it in an emotional attachment to either people that matter or a reason for change that's external to yourself. Because the first part is internal. We're doing this for ourselves. It's the most selfish exercise you can do. Become more true to yourself. But if we can attach it to things that we really, really value in our life and things that we have deep connection to, it makes it even more powerful. And then there's a daily practice, which is just going through what you've committed to, who you've committed to be, and making it a practice to remind yourself of that every morning. And at the end of the day, it's not a pass or fail, it's not a self-judgment, it's just was there anything that threw me off of being that person today? Or what were the things that really empowered me to be even more true to myself today? And we can learn from that every day and over weeks. It becomes more and more natural to just show up in our truest sense. So I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to having you back for the next video. Take care.